everybody, this is Charles from our course, and today we're going to be going over how to answer main idea questions on reading passages, and in particular fiction and nonfiction. If you want to follow along at home, this is taken from the Foundational Strategy for Digital SAT Reading and Writing. I'll be sure to link that in the description if you want to purchase that. So the first piece of advice I would give you on just really any reading text passage in question is really focus on the information in the words that you know. So what do I mean by that? A lot of times, like if you encounter a difficult passage, a lot of students, I think it's a psychological thing. They freak themselves out because they think, oh, I don't understand maybe 25% of this passage, or even I don't understand 50% of this passage. Now, the SAT cannot really evaluate if you understand 100% of the passage. The only thing they can grade you on is if you get the correct answer. And I'm here to tell you, you do not need to understand 100% of the passage to get the correct answer. A lot of times, even if you understand, 50, 75% of a passage, right, that's enough to get the main idea and to do these active reading strategies. So yeah, feel free, just focus on the parts of a passage that you know, right? You can ignore, in many cases, parts that you don't know. Okay, the second thing, and really the biggest thing, is actively read passages to identify main ideas, and this will depend on passage type, right? So for fiction, we want to focus on elements of characterization, setting, and plot. Okay, characterization means not just the names of the characters, but what can we tell about those characters' personality? What can we tell about the relationship? Maybe that's revealed through dialogue, or maybe it's revealed through their connection to some sort of setting. But yeah, characterization tends to be the most important. These are 100-word passages, so there's not a lot of plot. A lot of times the plot just, revolves around, how the characters are interacting, or something related to the characters. Okay, for nonfiction passages, we want to identify the topic, the main idea, and the purpose. The purpose is especially important. And generally, you can break, nonfiction purposes into two categories. It's either informative or it is persuasive. Now, that purpose should be reflected in the main idea. So, for example, if it's a persuasive passage, the main idea should involve, what the author is trying to argue or the point that they are trying to make. There will be a lot of overlap with these active reading strategies for poetry, data, and bullet point passages, but just as an introduction, we're just going to cover these for fiction and nonfiction. Okay, with this, it's also important, use the passage for the information, not the answer choices, right? And that, seems obvious, but a lot of times, students immediately read the question, they immediately look at answer choices without really stopping to take the time to answer the question in their own words. And what happens then is they allow the answer choices to affect them. They allow the answer choices to influence, how they view the passage. So it's just really important before you look at answer choices, take the time again to identify characterization, setting, plot for fiction, or topic, main idea, purpose for nonfiction. And that should, again, really set the parameters for the types of answer choices that you're looking for. And the last thing with that, and this relates a lot to, the process of elimination, which, again, I covered in the previous video, but you want to match answer choices to your answer, not the other way around. And again, this relates to the idea that you don't want to let the answer choices influence your decision making, right? Do not try and justify answer choices. Again, with answer choices, keep in mind they are imperfect approximations of information. If I asked you, in many cases, to write your own answer to SAT questions, you would write better answers than the answers that are provided in the multiple choice. In school, right, you lose points if you're not detailed enough. The people writing the SAT don't lose points if they're not detailed enough. And in many cases, correct answer choices might be a bit vague. They're not going to use the exact same words used in the passage. They might rephrase things using different language. And so really, as you are selecting answer choices, right, you need to think about the idea more than the words that are used. Okay, the words, again, do not have to match the words used in the passage. Okay, so let's apply these techniques to a nonfiction passage to start. So algorithms designed to maximize the amount of time users spend on websites are behind every YouTube recommendation, autofilled search, Twitter feed, and Facebook post. Greater user engagement is not just about the content a site offers, but the assumptions that go into the algorithms and their ability to understand an individual's preferences. While many of these recommendations are anodyne, they are also capable of prodding users down rabbit holes filled with conspiracy theories, fake news, political propaganda, and extremist ideologies. They have even been linked to acts of violence. Okay, so number one, let's simplify the passage. And again, we're using a lot of the techniques we talked about in actually grammar videos, like things like participle phrases, prepositional phrases, introductory clauses, dependent clauses, just to get to the core of our information here. So yeah, we've taken out the participle phrase and prepositional phrases designed to maximize the amount of time users spend. So we're left with algorithms are behind every YouTube recommendation, autofilled search, Twitter feed, and Facebook post. Right, pretty straightforward. Greater user engagement is not just about the content a site offers, but the assumptions that go into the algorithms and their ability to understand an individual's preferences. We've taken out the introductory clause here, and we're just left with they are capable of prodding users down rabbit holes. Taking out another participle phrase there. And then that last independent clause, they've been linked to acts of violence, right? So that really clarifies the passage there. Just, again, the core of what the passage is trying to say. The other technique you can use is from the vocab section and using context to figure out unknown words. Now, in this case, I took out the introductory clause here that is while many of these recommendations are anodyne. Let's say you don't know what anodyne means. In some cases, that might be important to your understanding of a passage. Let's use context to see if we can figure that out. So while many of these recommendations are anodyne, okay, it's setting up a contrast because we start the sentence with while. But it also then says they are capable of prodding users down rabbit holes filled with conspiracy theories, fake news, political propaganda. So these are all very negative things. So we have that contrast, the way the sentence is structured. So again, these are harmful things. Conspiracy theories, fake news, political propaganda. So I would say anodyne is the opposite of harmful, maybe something like harmless, which indeed it is. So again, yeah, using all these different techniques we've covered in other videos, right? You can apply that to, difficult passage texts that you might not understand. But again, the big takeaway here, focus on the parts that you do know. Don't fixate on parts that you don't know. Okay, now that we have clarified and simplified that passage, let's look at the active reading strategy. Okay, so the topic here is clearly algorithms. And again, for nonfiction passages, it's the topic, main idea, and purpose. Now, the main idea is that algorithms are widespread but have unintended and negative consequences. Again, the first half of that passage is like how algorithms are used and their popularity. The second part is arguing that they have a lot of these negative consequences. Now, the purpose here, and again, purpose, very, very important, and you can see it reflected in the main idea, but the purpose is persuasive. The author is trying to persuade you that algorithms are, bad in many ways. Now, persuasive passages, they're not 100% persuasive. A lot of times, maybe it's 70, 80% of the passage is just informing you, and then based on that information, they draw a conclusion. This one's a bit on the edge, but it's leaning to being persuasive. It's not a conclusion that's, a controversial one. It seems like something that a lot of people would agree with about algorithms and unintended consequences. But yeah, the author is trying to persuade us they are negative. Okay, so main idea questions can take different forms, and they can have different wording. They typically reference, a main idea, a purpose, or some sort of function. So in this case, we have the question, which choice best states the main idea of the text? Okay, we have our active reading strategy. We have identified what the passage is about. Now let's go through and make some eliminations. So remember, verbs are very important, and not just the verb, but the verb phrase. So we have offered background information. That's okay. On technological issue, okay, that could be algorithms, in order to provide historical context. I don't really see the historical context. I really don't like that. Okay, next one. Detail a popular viewpoint. Okay, yes, it's persuasive. It's a viewpoint. I don't know if it's someone else's viewpoint. It seems like the author's viewpoint, so it's kind of weird to say detail a popular viewpoint on a relevant cultural issue. I don't really like the cultural issue part. It's a technological issue. I mean, it has some cultural consequences, perhaps, but that seems a bit odd to me. I might not eliminate that. I don't love it, though. And again, you need to think of these, well, maybe it's not incorrect. I don't know if that's correct yet. I see recommend policy solutions. Okay, now it's persuasive, right, the passage. But is it recommending solutions? It's definitely not. I mean, it's saying there's a problem. It's not telling us how we solve that problem. I don't like C. D, argue that there are serious concerns to a common technological practice. Okay, it's arguing. Yes, it's persuasive. Again, if this was an informative passage and you had a verb that said argue, you would eliminate. But in this case, that works. Serious concerns, yes, to a common technological practice. That could be using algorithms. So yeah, I mean, you go through, you do your elimination. D does seem the best. B, not, again, incorrect necessarily. It's not correct. It's, the cultural issue is weird. The popular viewpoint's weird. So yeah, you can see D is a lot better. But you can see my mindset as I'm doing that. I'm not thinking like D is perfect, right? And in many cases, again, if you ask a student to like write their own answer, you would probably write a better answer than the answers that are provided in the multiple choice. Again, what the SAT is trying to get you to do is to choose between some bad options in some cases. So again, right, don't get fooled by vocabulary words. Like, let's say if we had and instead of technological issue, if it said offer background information on algorithms, and then the rest was in order to provide historical context. A lot of students would choose option A if it had that algorithms, because they think, it's about algorithms, but they then don't think like, okay, it's not historical context. It's not providing that. So again, the idea here is more important than the words used, and you need to think about the whole idea, not just part of the idea. Okay, so again, D is the best choice. All right, let's now look at a fiction passage. And this is a bit more difficult than our nonfiction passage. But so, thinking thus, Iola resolved at whatever cost of pain it might be to herself to explain to Dr. Gresham what she meant by the insurmountable barrier. Iola, after a continuous strain upon her nervous system for months, began to suffer from general debility and nervous depression. Dr. Gresham saw the increasing pallor on Iola's cheek and the loss of buoyancy in her step. Okay, so we can simplify this passage. Again, a lot of participle phrases, prepositional phrases, whatever, but we have Iola resolved to explain to Dr. Gresham what she meant by the barrier. Iola began to suffer from general debility and nervous depression. Dr. Gresham saw the increasing pallor on her cheek and the loss of buoyancy in her step. Okay. Now, we do our characterization, setting, and plot here. And again, go in that order. Characterization is the most important, which is why I put it first. Now, we see that Iola feels there's some sort of barrier, and it seems to be causing some physical symptoms. Now, Dr. Gresham seems to notice these symptoms. That's basically it. We don't really have a setting here, right? We know that the characters seem to be interacting, but we don't know where. We don't really know when. So we're just really no setting in this case. The plot here, again, revolves around the characterization. Dr. Gresham basically is aware of something being wrong with Iola, and he sees kind of a physical manifestation of whatever trouble she is having. Okay. Now, if we look at our question here, right, in addition to questions that reference just the main idea or the main purpose, sometimes it will ask about the function. And you might think, that's a different category type, but really it's a main idea in disguise. So like thinking thus, Iola resolved at whatever cost of pain it might be to herself to explain to Dr. Gresham what she meant by the insurmountable barrier. So what is the function of that sentence in the overall purpose of the text? Now, on the SAT, I mean, it's the text passages are so short. The function of a sentence in a text is going to relate to the main idea, and that's why it's included in the main ideas here. So like we think here, okay, it's introducing the idea that, there's some barrier or she has some trouble. And then again, the rest of the passage shows how that causes physical symptoms and how Dr. Gresham, identifies those or, is aware of those, right? Okay, so we look at our answer choices. A, highlight the power of tragedy and its psychological effects. Tragedy seems a bit odd. I don't see anything about tragedy. Did you? We know there's a barrier, but I don't necessarily know that that's tragedy. Tragedy. Could not speak. All right, B. Introduce a pretense for events referenced later in the passage. Okay, maybe you don't know the word pretense, and that will happen sometimes on an answer choice. If you don't understand the answer choice, it's always a possibility. Maybe you get lucky and you think, oh, the other 3 options are incorrect. I don't understand this option. Maybe I can choose it. But right now, if you didn't understand pretense, I would just leave it. We'll come back to that. C. Reveal the cause of a character's physical suffering. Possibly. There's a barrier. I didn't really see anything about to say reveal the cause. I know it's a barrier. Seems okay. Again, not incorrect. I don't know if it's correct yet, but D. Provide a resolution to a conflict between characters. Okay, I saw nothing about a resolution. And again, resolution would be like resolving a problem, or in this case, a conflict, which I say. Also, I didn't really see anything about a conflict other than there's some barrier, but I don't know. Does that qualify as a conflict? I don't really think so. So, right away, yeah, I'd eliminate A and D. Let's go through and think about these. But yeah, A is a bit too general. We don't know if the barrier was a tragedy necessarily, so eliminate A. Pretense, if you know what pretense means, it's like a fake reason for doing something. I don't see a pretense. If you didn't know that, again, keep it. If you looked at C, reveal the cause of a character's physical suffering. We did see the physical symptoms. C seems to relate to the main idea, right? Yes, it's a function, but thinking about what we know about characterization, setting, and plot, C seems pretty good. And then D, yeah, again, we didn't really see anything about conflict or a resolution of conflict, so you'd eliminate D. Yeah, I would choose C, and indeed that is our correct answer. If you feel like you need additional work on main idea questions, or perhaps just more direction to your studying, please go to alcoras.com. It's free to sign up and free to use. What you can do there is take the full-length College Board practice test. When you input your answers, it will give you a very precise breakdown of all these issues, along with additional practice, so you can really isolate these issues to get your scores up. There's a lot of other very cool features on there, like a college database to help you with your search for colleges or majors. There is personality testing you can do to help you shape your applications or think about possible careers. You can generate application task lists to really help organize your deadlines and all of those application components. So yeah, a lot of very cool things you can do on there. Please check that out. If you have questions or need anything clarified, as always, please let me know in the comments. I'll catch you on the next one.